Rain has a way of telling the truth. It taps, it insists, it refuses to let a lie stay quiet. That morning, it drummed against my apartment windows like a verdict being read out loud, and maybe that's why I didn't flinch when the phone rang. I already knew the truth the rain was whispering: my family was never going to show up. The funeral home smelled faintly of carnations and old paper, the way abandoned places do. I stood beside the tiny casket, my son's casket, and listened to the rain dragging itself down the glass like it was trying to weep for the people who couldn't be bothered. My family had a conflict, you see. Not an emergency. Not a sudden illness. Not even an unexpected crisis. They had a gala. A spring gala, with gold-trimmed invitations and a red carpet entrance designed by my older sister, Marissa, the self-anointed queen of Baltimore charity events. A night of champagne, sequins, and curated photo ops with captions about community and hope. A night so important they couldn't miss it. Even if it meant skipping the funeral of their 6-year-old grandson and nephew. They told me this gently, of course. Politely. As if they were doing me a favor by explaining how unfair it would be for them to cancel something so meaningful to so many. My mother stroked my arm and told me I was being emotionally impulsive. My father reminded me the gala supported real causes. And Marissa? She didn't even pretend. "You're not the only one grieving, Tessa," she said. "A lot of people have invested in this event." As if tickets and donors outweighed the weight of my child in a hospital bed. So when the minister asked if I wanted to wait a few more minutes before beginning, I shook my head. My voice didn't tremble. My hands didn't shake. I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because something inside me had already splintered into clean, cold edges. They made their choice. They chose a night of glitter and flashbulbs over a morning of grief and responsibility. They chose applause over accountability. They chose their image over my son. And standing there, listening to the rain carve its way down the windows, I made mine. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to confront them. I was going to let them enjoy their perfect night, their last perfect night, before I took everything they loved, piece by careful piece. If you looked at my life on paper before everything fell apart, it would have seemed small, neat, and easily overlooked, like a library book misfiled on a back shelf. I was 38, a public librarian at a branch tucked between a laundromat and a discount shoe store in East Baltimore. My days were measured in due dates and shelving carts, in the soft thump of returned books and the low murmur of people who still believed in quiet. I liked order. I liked systems. I liked knowing where things belonged, even if people rarely treated me like I belonged anywhere in particular. I had an ex-husband, Evan, who existed mostly in the form of child support statements and sporadic voicemails that started with, "Hey, Tessa, sorry, I've been swamped, we'd been over for years." He lived in North Carolina with a new wife and a new dog and, judging by his Instagram, a new sense of purpose that somehow didn't stretch far enough to cross state lines more than twice a year. None of that mattered much, because I had Noah. Noah was 6 years old, with a laugh that sounded like it was tripping over itself to get out, and hair that always refused to lie flat. He had my nose and his father's crooked smile, and a way of staring at things: bugs on the sidewalk, water swirling down a drain, dust motes floating in a shaft of light, as if they were telling him secrets. "Look, Mommy," he'd say, tugging my sleeve while we walked past the inner harbor, his rain boots splashing. "The water's trying to talk. It's saying shh." He was a quiet kid, but not shy. He seemed to understand people better than they understood themselves. Once, at the library, he climbed up into the lap of an old man who came in to read the newspaper and never checked anything out. The man looked startled, then oddly relieved, like someone had just reminded him he still existed. "For you," Noah said, handing him a picture book about trains. You look like you miss them." The old man's eyes had filled with tears. Later, I saw him lingering at the children's section, pretending to browse. That was what my life was, small moments. Quiet corridors. The hum of fluorescent lights at closing time. The satisfaction of fitting one more book perfectly into place. My sister's life, on the other hand, did not fit neatly anywhere. Marissa lived on a hillside overlooking the city, in a house with floor-to-ceiling windows and a driveway that curled like a question mark. She drove a white luxury SUV. She changed her hair every season. She hosted events with names like Hope in Bloom, and Lights for Change, and Voices of Promise. Her face appeared on local news segments whenever a nonprofit needed a spokesperson, framed by her perfectly waved hair and sympathetic nods. Baltimore's own philanthropy powerhouse, One Lifestyle magazine had called her. The headlines sat framed on my parents' mantle. When we were kids, I was the one who got straight A's and read under the covers with a flashlight. She was the one who learned how to cry strategically in front of adults and never met a camera she didn't like. Somewhere along the way, the world decided she was the main story and I was just footnotes. It wasn't that my parents didn't love me. They just didn't quite know what to do with me. With Marissa, everything was easy: school recitals, homecoming court, college visits where the admissions counselors leaned forward and said things like, "You have such presence." They could show her off. She gave them a reflected glow. With me, they squinted, as if trying to figure out where I fit into the narrative they'd built around themselves. "You're such a hard worker," my father would say, which is the kind of compliment people give when they can't think of anything else. "You're very sensible," my mother would add, pursing her lips like it was almost as good as being impressive. When I got pregnant at 31, unmarried and stubbornly independent, the disappointment was quiet but sharp. They never said the word mistake, but it sat in the room with us, smoking an invisible cigarette. When Evan left a year later, it only confirmed what they'd always suspected, that I attracted the wrong kind of permanence. Noah was my redemption, but only to me. To my parents, he was a complication. To Marissa, he was occasionally a prop, the brave little nephew she mentioned in captions when she posted pictures from pediatric charity drives her foundation, the Marissa Cole Foundation for Children's Futures, helped sponsor. "Smile, baby," she'd coo, adjusting his shirt so the logo faced the camera. "This is for a good cause. Right, Tess?" I'd swallow what I wanted to say and nod. We needed the help. The foundation's events had, to their credit, helped cover some of Noah's early medical bills, before things got complicated. The first signs were small. A stumble on the stairs. A complaint about his legs, feeling heavy. I thought it was growing pains. Kids fall. Kids trip. Kids say strange things about their bodies because they're still figuring out where they end and the world begins. But then his handwriting started to shake. His balance wavered when he stood still. He slept more, but his eyes developed a strange, too bright alertness that made my stomach twist. The hospital became another place I knew intimately: the beeping monitors, the antiseptic smell that clung to my clothes, the way the pediatric ward walls tried too hard to be cheerful, covered in fading murals of cartoon animals that seemed tired of pretending. We sat in rooms with doctors whose faces blurred together. They used words like degenerative and progressive and uncommon. They talked about enzymes and faulty genes, about therapies that might slow things but couldn't reverse them. My brain registered the syllables, the terms, the diagrams, but some part of me refused to absorb their meaning. At night, in the hospital's parents' lounge, I did what I knew how to do: I researched. I dove into medical databases, patient forums, obscure clinical trials in other states. I read everything. I printed articles and arranged them in binders with color-coded tabs. I tracked timelines, symptoms, side effects. I talked to other parents in online groups whose profile pictures were half hope, half exhaustion. "It's good to have something to focus on," one of the nurses said sympathetically when she saw my stack of notes. "You're very organized." That was the thing about me. When my world threatened to fracture, I reached for order. When Marissa visited the hospital, she didn't bring binders. She brought a photographer once, though. "A small shoot," she said, "just for internal use, to humanize the foundation newsletter. We can blur his face," she offered, as if that made it better. I told her no. Noah was not going to be a backdrop for her brand. She rolled her eyes and brought balloons instead, the kind with metallic surfaces that reflected his hospital bed in warped, gleaming shapes. "You know I'm doing everything I can," she said, arms crossed, nails painted a hard, glossy red. "My profile is helping raise money. That money helps kids like Noah. This isn't about me." "It's always about you," I said quietly. She didn't answer, just checked her phone, mouth tightening when she saw the time. "I have a meeting downtown. Kiss him for me." She left the half-deflated balloons strewn around his bed like strange, fluttering witnesses. My parents were better, in a way, or at least more consistent. They came sometimes, especially in the beginning, bringing homemade soup and stiff smiles. My mother fussed over Noah's blankets and commented on how pale I looked. My father asked practical questions about insurance deductibles and payment plans. "You're strong," he told me, patting my shoulder. "You've always been the strong one." He said it as if that had been my choice. But as the months went by and Noah's condition worsened, muscles weakening, speech slowing, moments of confusion creeping in, their visits thinned. They had commitments. They had obligations. They had a calendar already crammed with luncheons, board meetings, and events. "We can't just stop living," my mother said once, when I asked why they hadn't come in over a week. Her voice sounded defensive, frayed at the edges. "It's not healthy, for any of us." I looked at her across the cafeteria table, my coffee growing cold between my hands, and realized she truly believed that. For them, my son was an island of sorrow in the middle of their busy, curated lives. Visiting too often meant admitting something irreversible was happening, something that couldn't be managed with a donation, a hashtag, or a carefully worded press release. So I stopped asking. The last few weeks of Noah's life were mostly quiet. The rain came often then, blanching the city in gray and making the hospital windows sweat. At night, when he slept, I would sit by the bed and listen to the soft mechanical breathing of machines and the distant squeak of a janitor's cart. I read aloud from his favorite books, stories about ocean creatures and space explorers, about kids who found secret doors in ordinary places. "Do you think there's a door here?" he whispered once, eyes half closed, fingers weakly curling around mine. "Like, in the wall?" "Maybe," I said. "If there is, I bet it goes somewhere with no needles and no yucky medicine." "And lots of books," he added. "And lots of books," I agreed. He smiled a little and drifted off, his breath shallow but even. In those moments, my world was nothing but the steady blink of the monitor, the weight of his small hand in mine, and the low hum of fluorescent lights that made everything feel both too real and not real at all. Outside, life went on. Cars hissed on wet pavement. People scrolled through their phones. My sister's face appeared on local news promoting her upcoming Spring Gala for Children's Futures, a glittering charity event aimed, supposedly, at supporting kids like my son. "Hope is a verb," she said in the interview, her voice warm, her eyes glossy. "We can't just talk about change, we have to be the change." In the reflection of the hospital TV screen, I could see my own face, pale and hollow-eyed, floating like a ghost beside hers. I muted the sound and went back to reading to Noah. I didn't know it yet, but that gala would become the dividing line between the life I had before and whatever jagged thing was coming next. The moment that turned grief into something sharper, colder. The moment my family decided that their image was worth more than my child. And the moment I learned what I was capable of when everything else was gone. The week after Noah died felt like living inside a slowed-down film reel, everything muted, dimmed, the colors leached out like rainwater soaking through chalk. The city kept moving, but I drifted through it like a ghost tethered loosely to a body I barely recognized. The funeral home asked for photographs, so I gathered the ones I could bear to look at. Noah in his rain boots, standing in a puddle big enough to swallow his ankles. Noah holding a library book to his chest like a treasure map. Noah at the aquarium pressing his hand against the glass as a stingray glided past. I brought them in a small envelope. My hands shook only once, when I saw his crooked smile and a photo I'd forgotten existed. Everything else, the arrangements, the paperwork, the order of service, I approached with a cold, clipped efficiency that startled even me. I think the funeral director expected wailing or at least visible distress. But the truth is, grief had sunk so deep it no longer flared on the surface. It pressed inward, not out, like a stone lodged under the sternum. The funeral was scheduled for a Saturday morning. A date chosen by the pastor. A date confirmed by the cemetery. A date the hospital chaplain assured me would give me enough time to gather myself. It was the only opening that week. When I texted the details to my family, Marissa called almost immediately. "Saturday?" she demanded, as if the word itself offended her. "Tessa, that's the spring gala. You know that." "I know," I whispered. "You know how important it is," she pressed on. "I sent you the invitations months ago. The venue's booked. The sponsors are confirmed. We can't move a fundraiser of this scale." I didn't say what I was thinking. "You didn't ask if the funeral could move. You asked if I would move it." "Tessa," she added, softening her voice into the patronizing tone she used when she wanted something. "Look, honey, grief does strange things to people. But you have to be reasonable. We can do the funeral Sunday. Or even Monday. People will understand." "No," I said. A long silence stretched across the line, taut as wire. "So that's it," she snapped. "You're going to choose inconvenience over family?" I felt my pulse in my temples. "My son is dead, Marissa. This is not an inconvenience." Her breath hitched, but not from sympathy. "Don't be dramatic." And then she hung up. 10 minutes later, my mother called, her voice carefully modulated into something she thought sounded soothing. "Sweetheart," she said, "we know you're hurting. But do you really want to make a spectacle out of this? People are watching our family right now." "Watching," I echoed. "You mean judging?" "Well, yes," she admitted faintly. "And you know how people talk. If we cancel the gala, it will hurt your sister's foundation. It will hurt her reputation. And that would be unfair to the people who rely on the charity." I nearly laughed. It came out as a sound closer to a cough. My funeral service for my child is unfair to them? Honey, please. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking very clearly. "You're punishing us," she whispered. "You're punishing your sister for being successful." I felt something inside me splinter, but not the way she intended. Not from guilt. From clarity. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even sigh. "I'm burying my son," I said calmly. "That's all." "Well," she said after a long pause, her voice turning crisp with that particular brand of parental disappointment I had known since childhood. "If you insist on being unreasonable, we will remember this." The call ended. My father didn't bother calling. He sent a text, We should discuss this when you're less emotional. 2 hours later, a group message appeared in the family chat, one I had always been an afterthought in. Marissa, we won't be able to make the funeral due to prior obligations. We'll visit Noah's grave next week. We're praying for you. My mother, this is a difficult decision for all of us. Try to see the bigger picture. My father, stay strong. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. In the silence of my apartment, the refrigerator hummed softly. Rain hissed against the window. A stack of folded blankets sat untouched on the couch, still smelling faintly of the lavender detergent Noah liked. I set my phone down and didn't pick it up again until the next morning. The funeral day came like a bruise, dark, aching, swollen with things unspoken. I woke before dawn, the air damp and cold. The city outside was washed in gray, rain pooling in the gutters, streetlights smearing into halos in the mist. I dressed slowly. Black slacks. Black sweater. Noah's favorite scarf, navy with little white stars, wrapped loosely around my neck. It was absurd, but I felt closer to him with it on. At the funeral home, the director looked at me with the kind of cautious sympathy people reserve for those they suspect might break at any moment. Would you like to wait? He asked gently. In case more guests arrive? I knew who he meant. And I knew no one was coming. No, I said. Let's begin. The chapel was small, lined with wooden pews polished smooth by decades of hands. The minister spoke softly, his words sincere but distant, like he was reading them from across a divide neither of us could cross. My coworkers came. A few parents from the library came. 2 nurses from the hospital came, standing near the back holding hands. Even the old man who loved the newspaper came, his eyes wet behind his wire-framed glasses. But not my family. Not one. I didn't cry. The grief inside me felt too deep for tears, something sedimented, heavy, like wet sand filling every hollow space. After the service, we drove in a small procession to the cemetery. The sky hung low, swollen with unshed rain. Mud sucked softly at my shoes as I approached the gravesite. The casket looked impossibly small lowering into the ground. I knelt and placed one of his books, Milo and the Moonfish, at the edge of the grave. Rain soaked through the cover before I even stood up. People lingered around me, hesitant, offering gentle touches on my shoulder or murmured condolences I barely registered. Then they trickled away, one by one, until I stood alone, the earth dark and raw beneath my feet. After a long while, I walked back to my car, rain beating on the windshield like 1,000 unspoken apologies. When I opened my phone, a notification popped up, a new post from my sister. I didn't want to look. I looked anyway. A photo from the gala. Marissa in a shimmering silver gown, smiling radiantly under chandeliers. My parents stood beside her, my mother's pearls glowing softly, my father in a crisp tuxedo. Behind them, a banner read Spring Gala for Children's Futures. The caption, Family, Community, New Beginnings. Tonight reminded us what matters most. I stared at the screen until the letters seemed to tremble. Another post followed, this one a video. Laughter. Applause. Clinking glasses. My parents hugging donors. Marissa on stage, hand pressed to her heart, tears shimmering theatrically. We are a family built on love, she declared into the microphone. And nothing is stronger than that. A comment underneath caught my eye. You're truly an inspiration, Marissa. Where does your strength come from? She replied, from my incredible family. We always show up for each other. A quiet, cold rage threaded through me. Not hot. Not explosive. Cold, icy, precise, the kind of cold that makes things brittle enough to break. Later, when I returned home, a voicemail waited from my mother, recorded sometime during the gala. "You need to stop punishing us, Tessa. We're grieving too, you know. This attitude is tearing the family apart." My hands tightened around the phone. I didn't scream. I didn't call back. I didn't throw anything. Instead, I sat down at my small dining table, pulled out a notebook, and wrote one sentence at the top of a blank page. "They chose their celebration. Now I choose mine." I didn't yet know what revenge would look like. But I knew where to start, with the truth they had always underestimated. The truth I knew how to find. The truth buried in records, databases, emails, financial statements. The truth hiding in the glitter of my sister's perfect charity empire. A truth she'd never imagined I could uncover. But I am a librarian. And if there is one thing I know how to do, it is follow a trail. Grief makes some people retreat. It made me sharpen. After the funeral, I returned to the library on a Tuesday morning. The rain was falling in steady, drizzling sheets, the kind that seems to hover in the air rather than drop, like a mist that hasn't made up its mind. The sidewalks glistened, and the city's colors looked washed out, as though someone had turned the saturation down on a photograph. My co-workers greeted me gently, with the kind of careful, weighted kindness people use around someone who's been hollowed out. They meant well. They always had. But even their sympathy felt like something I needed to fold up and set aside so I could breathe. I wasn't ready to talk about Noah. I wasn't ready to talk about anything. But I was ready to work. The library was a refuge, a place where everything made sense if you followed the right system. Cataloging. Cross-referencing. Searching. People think librarians are gentle, harmless, soft-spoken guides in cardigans. They don't realize how much power lives in a database. How many stories hide in public documents. How many secrets exist in plain sight if you know where to look. When I sat at my desk that morning, the cursor blinking on the library's search portal felt like a heartbeat syncing with mine. Before I started digging, I made a rule. I would not go after my family because I wanted them to hurt. I would go after them because the truth deserved daylight. If that truth destroyed them, it would be a consequence of their own choices, not my grief. Still, I felt the cold determination settling inside me like a second spine. The first step was simple. I looked up the Marissa Cole Foundation for Children's Futures on Maryland's nonprofit registry. I'd done this once years ago, out of curiosity, but back then I wasn't looking for anything. This time, I was looking for everything. The registry listed the basics: founding date, board members, annual filings. The PDFs were public, unassuming, black text on white backgrounds, financial tables, mission statements. At first glance, nothing looked technically wrong. At second glance, things looked padded. Vague. Too vague. I recognized the kind of strategic vagueness used by people who assume no one will dig deeper. For example, administrative fees, at 32% of annual revenue. Event production costs, listed under charitable expenses. Large, round number transfers to partner organizations, that didn't appear registered anywhere else. My eyebrows lifted slowly. A legitimate charity might have some of this. But not like this. Not layered. Not repeated. Not hidden behind vague terminology. I bookmarked each document and created a spreadsheet, the way Noah and I used to sort his dinosaur cards. Column A, document name column B, year column C, suspicious items column D, possible leads column E, external sources. Once I start organizing something, I can't stop. It's a compulsion. A system is a safety net, and I needed one now more than ever. The second step came almost accidentally. I searched for the name of one of the partner organizations listed in the filings, Bright Future Kids Outreach. Nothing. I searched variations: Bright Futures Kids Outreach, Bright Future Maryland, still nothing. I tried state registries, business licenses, child welfare partnerships. No trace. So, either the nonprofit was brand new and unregistered, unlikely, given the thousands of dollars it supposedly received, or it didn't exist. I felt a small spark ignite inside me, not joy, but the first flicker of purpose. At home that evening, my apartment felt heavier than usual. I kept expecting to hear the sound of Noah's footsteps running down the hallway, or his voice calling from his bedroom asking if we could read just one more chapter. Instead, the rooms echoed. I made tea and sat at the dining table with my laptop. Outside, the rain tapped softly against the glass, persistent, rhythmic, like it was cheering me on. I started digging into social media records next. Charity photos, event posts, hashtags, donor tags. Marissa had built an empire of carefully curated images: children holding balloons, ribbon cuttings, smiling families, oversized checks. But I noticed something else, something subtle. A lot of the children in her photos never appeared twice. No follow-ups. No updates. No recurring support posts. Most legitimate children's charities show long-term partnerships, ongoing relationships, yearly check-ins. Not one-off photos with kids who vanished from the narrative once they'd served their purpose. So I cross-referenced dates. And in the background of one gala photo, I noticed a banner listing sponsors. One sponsor stood out: Eastport Youth Services. Eastport Youth Services didn't appear on any of the official filings. Not once. Yet there they were, sponsoring an event with no financial record of involvement. I checked the Maryland registry. The address listed was a UPS mailbox in a strip mall. Another ghost organization. Pattern forming. The next few days followed a rhythm: work at the library, smile politely, complete tasks, go home, dig deeper, take notes, cross-reference. Every night, I filled more of the spreadsheet. I found donation receipts posted online with mismatched amounts. Event budgets that listed entertainment costs 3 times higher than similar events in the city. Payments to vendors that didn't exist. Anonymous donors making repeated large contributions, always rounded to the nearest thousand. Silent auctions with no listed winners. Scholarship programs with no publicly posted recipients. Each red flag reinforced the same quiet truth: this wasn't sloppy accounting. This was deliberate obfuscation. Then I found something else. A journalist. Her name was Dana Roth, investigative reporter for the Baltimore Ledger. She had written exposés on local nonprofits before, ones that funneled money into private pockets, ones that fabricated community programs, ones that used tragedy as a branding tool. I remembered one article that had gone viral 2 years ago, exposing a scholarship fund that had funneled over $200,000 into the founder's luxury travel. Dana had a soft, pinpoint-precise writing style that made every fact land like a blow. She'd be perfect. But I wasn't ready yet. I needed enough evidence to withstand scrutiny. Enough to force the truth into the world whether my family wanted it or not. So I kept digging. One afternoon, while sorting through last year's gala photos on my sister's Instagram, something stopped me. In a slideshow of event images, the 7th photo showed Marissa posing with 3 men, board members, judging by the tags. Behind them was a tall display listing major donors. The display was glossy, ornate, with gold lettering. 2 of the listed donors were organizations I had already confirmed didn't exist. But a 3rd name stood out: Cole and Sutton Development Partners. My stomach tightened. Cole. As in my father. Cole and Sutton was his real estate partnership, a legitimate, long-standing company that renovated row houses and developed office spaces. A company that had weathered recessions and industry shifts. A company that had no business donating $50,000 to a children's foundation without mentioning it in the annual report I'd read in January. Publicly listed donor, $50,000. Official corporate filings, $0 listed under charitable contributions. Tax filings, no donation. Something was very wrong. I dug harder, into property records, business filings, public contracts. I cross-checked the timeline of their supposed donation with the sale of a property my father's company had completed the same month. The numbers didn't match. In fact, they contradicted each other so blatantly that it only made sense if, no. I wasn't ready to think that yet. I printed out the documents. Spread them across my kitchen table. Connected the dots with a red pen like a detective in a crime procedural. Every line pointed toward one conclusion: money was moving through the foundation. Money that wasn't theirs. Money that wasn't raised honestly. And my family, my parents, weren't just aware. They were benefiting. A few nights later, I received a text from my mother. "Your father and I want to talk. You've been distant since the funeral. We're worried." I stared at the message. Distant. As though they hadn't carved the distance themselves, choosing champagne and chandeliers over Noah's resting place. I didn't reply. She sent another, "This isn't healthy, Tessa. You can't isolate forever." I turned my phone off. At work, the head librarian noticed I was spending more time than usual in the closed stacks. "You researching something?" she asked one afternoon, her tone not accusing, just curious. "Just organizing some things," I said. She nodded, unconcerned. She trusted me. Everyone trusted librarians. We moved quietly. Efficiently. Invisibly. I used that invisibility to spend my lunch breaks pulling public financial records of every vendor the foundation claimed to use. Some existed. Some didn't. Some were real but suspiciously overpriced. And then there were the emails. I remembered that nonprofits often keep public-facing email archives, newsletter blasts, donor updates, announcements. So I signed up for the foundation's mailing list with a fresh dummy address and received nearly a decade of archived newsletters. Old newsletters revealed inconsistencies in event schedules, donation totals, and project timelines, proof that someone had quietly erased or rewritten parts of the foundation's history. I saved everything. Every email. Every newsletter. Every attachment. My folder grew so large I had to split it into subfolders. Emotionally, I felt like I was peeling away the skin of a rotten fruit, each layer more decayed than the last. But grief and anger make an effective solvent. They dissolve hesitation. Every night, I whispered into the quiet of my apartment, "I'm doing this for you, Noah." And maybe I was also doing it for myself, for the part of me that had been overlooked, minimized, dismissed for decades. Because truth is its own kind of justice. And I was ready to wield it. The turning point came unexpectedly. I was searching for a specific vendor, Holiday Harvest Catering, listed as providing premium culinary services at several of the foundation's galas. The address listed in the filings didn't lead to a business. It led to a house. A house in my parents' neighborhood. A house owned by a man who happened to be a friend of my father. A man who had no catering license. I checked old social media posts. The galas used professional catering companies, real ones, with their names tagged in the photos. So why was an unlicensed friend receiving thousands of dollars in payments? Middlemen. Shell vendors. Faked invoices. This was no longer suspicion. This was fraud. Systemic. organized, comfortable. And my sister had built her career on it. One more discovery sealed the next phase. While browsing archived web pages of the Foundation, thanks to the Wayback Machine, I found a page from 6 years ago, an event announcement boasting of record-breaking fundraising night. At the bottom of the page, in tiny, nearly hidden text, was a disclaimer: the Marissa Cole Foundation is currently undergoing routine compliance review. That note disappeared from the site a few months later. Routine compliance reviews don't get buried. Legal warnings do. I leaned back in my chair, pulse thrumming. My sister had been warned before. She had hidden it. My parents had helped her hide it. And they'd continued the same behavior. All while saying they couldn't miss a gala. All while posing for photos claiming they showed up for family. All while telling me to move on. I exhaled slowly. Everything I needed to know was in front of me. But I still needed one more piece, a witness. Someone on the inside. And I knew exactly where to find one. I found her in the most ordinary place imaginable, the grocery store on Fleet Street, standing in front of the yogurt section like she had all the time in the world. Her name was Allison Granger, though on the Foundation's website she had always been listed simply as A. Granger, Administrative Coordinator. I remembered her because she appeared in the background of several gala photos, usually holding a clipboard, or hovering near Marissa like a shadow trained to stay out of frame. She'd never looked comfortable in any of them. I didn't approach her immediately. I watched first. She was small, with dark hair pulled into a low bun, glasses slipping halfway down her nose, and a posture that suggested someone bracing for impact long before it arrives. She wore an oversized raincoat despite the drizzle having eased hours ago. But most telling was how she kept glancing over her shoulder, tiny, habitual checks, the way people do when their nerves have been stretched thin for too long. I recognized the look. It was the expression of someone who knew too much. When she finally reached for a carton, I stepped beside her, choosing the same shelf. "Allison?" I said quietly. She startled, nearly dropping the container. Sorry, she murmured, pushing her glasses up. "Do I know you?" "You work for the Cole Foundation," I said. Her face went still. Utterly still. A mask dropping into place. "I'm not allowed to discuss internal operations with anyone outside the organization." The words came out crisp, rehearsed, like she'd been forced to repeat them many times. "I'm not asking about internal operations," I said gently. "I just want to talk. About my sister." Something flickered in her eyes. Recognition. Concern. Maybe guilt. We stood there between shelves of dairy products and fluorescent lights humming like tired insects. "I'm Marissa's sister," I clarified. "Tessa." The color drained from her face. "Oh," she whispered. I'm very sorry for your loss." She meant it. I could hear the softness in her voice, the genuine sympathy that had been absent from every family conversation I'd had in weeks. But sincerity was a luxury she seemed terrified to display, so she tucked it back behind her lips and lifted her chin. "Still," she said nervously, "I can't talk about anything related to the Foundation without authorization." "Is that because of the legal warning?" I asked. "The one you received about 6 years ago?" Her breath caught audibly. The yogurt carton slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a soft thud. For a moment, she didn't move. She just stared at me, frozen, grocery store noises around us fading to a distant hum. How did you know about that?" she whispered. "I research things," I said simply. "It's what I do." She bent to pick up the carton with shaking hands. It was dented, so she set it aside on the edge of the shelf and grabbed another absent-mindedly. "Please," she murmured, eyes darting toward the aisle entrance. Not here. I nodded once. We abandoned our carts and walked outside into the damp evening air. The drizzle had returned, light, misty drops that clung to hair and eyelashes. People hurried past, umbrellas bobbing like dark blossoms. I guided her to the side of the building under a narrow awning where we couldn't be overheard. For a long moment, she said nothing. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself, eyes fixed on the wet pavement. "You're going to ruin everything," she whispered finally. I waited. She swallowed hard. "Do you have any idea what your sister is capable of?" "Yes," I said quietly. "More than she thinks." Allison's shoulders slumped. "She said the compliance review was routine," she murmured. "She said the discrepancies were clerical errors. She said if I just signed the statements, everything would be fine." "And you believed her?" "I needed the job," she said, voice breaking on the last word. "My mother was sick. I was drowning in bills. She dangled stability in front of me like a lifeline. And every year since, it's been harder to leave because I know things I shouldn't." I let the silence stretch. "She's been moving money," Allison whispered. "Using shell vendors. Faking receipts. Inflating event costs. She makes it look legitimate, but it isn't. None of it is." "How long has this been happening?" "Since the beginning," she admitted. "The compliance warning 6 years ago, you're right, that wasn't routine. They found inconsistencies in event budgets. But your parents helped her frame it as a misunderstanding. They buried it. And her voice cracked. "I signed the revised documents." She looked up at me then, eyes red, lashes wet not from rain but from shame. "They told me to keep quiet," she said. "That it would be terrible for the family if the truth came out. That donors would lose faith. That people would suffer. They made it sound like protecting the lie was a form of charity." "It wasn't," I said. "I know." A car splashed through a puddle nearby, the sound sharp and lonely. "Why talk to me?" I asked softly. "Because you're not like them," she said without hesitation. "And because I saw the pictures." That sentence cut deeper than anything else. "What pictures?" "From the gala." Her voice trembled. "Your sister was celebrating while you were burying your son. I couldn't sleep after that. I couldn't keep pretending this is normal." For the first time, she met my gaze directly. "I'll tell you everything," she said. "I'll give you every document I have access to. But you need to promise me something." "What?" "That you won't let them pin this on me. They will try. They always try." I nodded. "I don't want revenge," I said. "I want truth." She exhaled shakily. Relief. Fear. Resignation. "That," she murmured, "I can help with." Allison wasn't exaggerating when she said she had documents. She arrived at my apartment 2 nights later carrying a canvas tote bag so heavy the straps dug into her shoulder. Her nervousness radiated through the hallway, quick glances over her shoulder, fingers fumbling with the zipper of her coat, breath shallow as though every flight of stairs echoed like a warning. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered as I opened the door. "No," I said honestly. "But I'm sure about them." She nodded, stepping inside. The moment I locked the door, her shoulders loosened ever so slightly, like she'd crossed an invisible border. I brewed chamomile tea, though neither of us drank much of it. My dining table, still covered in my printed spreadsheets, highlighted documents, and color-coded tabs, made her go pale. "You've already done so much," she whispered. "More than I have." "You lived inside the machine," I said. "That's something I couldn't have done." She gave a ghost of a smile, then opened the tote bag and emptied its contents: a flash drive, a manila folder thick with printed emails, 3 notebooks filled with handwriting copies of vendor contracts, blank invoices with Marissa's signature already printed, a binder labeled foundation, internal expenses, and then, last, a sealed envelope with red lettering across the top: confidential, legal notification, Cole Foundation. I froze. "This is the warning," she said softly. "The one they hid. The one that was never supposed to see daylight." I reached for it carefully, like it was something alive. Inside was a letter from the Maryland office of the Inspector for Nonprofits, dated 6 years earlier. It was blunt, factual, and unmistakably damning: evidence of misallocated funds, concerns regarding unregistered vendors, discrepancies between reported donations and verified transfers, required audit within 60 days. And at the bottom, CC, board members, including Mr. and Mrs. Cole. My breath stalled. "They knew," I whispered. "My parents knew from the beginning." Allison nodded, eyes glassy. "They helped bury the audit," she said. "They hired an accountant who signed off on a revised version. The foundation paid him quietly. The review was marked as resolved, and the original letter disappeared." "Except it didn't," I murmured, touching the envelope. "Because you kept a copy." "I kept everything," she said. "Out of fear, mostly. Fear that one day they'd blame me. Fear that I'd be the one left holding the bag." She looked at me, trembling. "But then your sister started attacking you online." My head snapped up. "What?" She reached for her phone and brought up a private account, Influence Sphere, a closed local influencer gossip forum where members shared inside scoops. There it was, a post titled "Trouble in the Cole Family." Underneath, images of me from my Facebook page. Photos from years ago, library events, pictures with Noah at the aquarium, snapshots from his birthday parties. The caption: "Marissa Cole's sister is causing drama again." Apparently she refused to reschedule her kid's funeral to help the family foundation. She's always been difficult. Sources say she's unstable and lashing out. My stomach dropped. Ice flooded my veins. In the comments, users speculated about my mental state, called me jealous, said I was trying to ruin my sister's big night. And mixed among them were usernames I recognized as my mother's friends, my father's business associates, even my sister's assistant. They were on offense, shaping a narrative, painting me as the villain before I even opened my mouth. Something inside me snapped into crystal clarity. "They're preparing for something," I said. Allison nodded gravely. "They're protecting themselves." I sat back, breathing slow and controlled. If they wanted a narrative war, I wasn't coming unarmed. "I have every message they sent me," I said. "Every text. Every voicemail." In my notebook drawer sat screenshots of Marissa calling me dramatic, my mother accusing me of punishing the family, my father telling me to stop being emotional. Their official posts about family support. The timestamps proving they were at the gala during the funeral. But I also had something they could never match: documentation. Receipts. Cross-reference data. A timeline built with librarian precision. And now, thanks to Allison, internal evidence. I exhaled. "I'm going to take this public," I said. Her eyes widened. "With a journalist?" "With the right journalist," I corrected. "Dana Roth," she whispered. "Exactly." She swallowed hard. "If you go through with this, it won't just expose your sister. It'll expose your parents, too." "I know. Are you prepared for that?" "Prepared? No. But ready?" "Yes." "I buried my son alone," I said. Whatever happens to them now is theirs to answer for. Allison nodded, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. Then I'll back you. The plan formed itself like a well-organized archive. Step 1. Compile a master file. A single document containing every financial discrepancy, every fake vendor, every falsified invoice, the legal warning, my family's messages, evidence of the smear campaign, screenshots of donor inconsistencies, photos from events contradicting official records. Step 2. Create a secure backup. 2 copies. Encrypted. Stored off-site, one in a cloud account under a pseudonym. Step 3. Contact Dana Roth anonymously. Send a teaser packet, a curated selection of the most damning evidence. Not everything. Not yet. Just enough to make her respond. Step 4. Meet with her in person to hand over the complete file. On neutral ground. In public. Where I could not be intimidated, interrupted, or followed. Step 5. Prepare for retaliation. Because my sister wouldn't go down quietly. She would attempt gaslighting, deflection, crying on camera, blaming clerical staff, pivoting into victimhood, but I would be ready. Because I would have every receipt, every message, every timestamp. The truth in its purest, coldest form. Step 6. Stay calm. No anger. No theatrics. Just facts. Nothing disarms liars like someone who refuses to be emotional on their terms. By the time Allison left that night, the rain had intensified, heavy, pounding sheets slapping against pavement, the kind of storm that makes the entire city sound like it's shuddering. She paused at the door. "Tessa," she whispered. "Do you ever worry this won't fix anything? That it won't heal anything?" I met her eyes. "It won't heal my son," I said. "Nothing will. But this isn't about healing. It's about truth." She nodded slowly, understanding settling over her like a weight she was willing, finally, to carry. As the door closed behind her, I felt a strange stillness settle inside me. Not peace. Not satisfaction. Just certainty. Everything would change soon. And I was the one who would begin the unraveling. The meeting with Dana Roth happened on a Thursday afternoon, though it felt like the whole city had been holding its breath since Monday. For 3 days, I waited. 3 days after I'd sent the anonymous teaser packet, a tight, controlled sample of the truth, the legal warning, 2 conflicting invoices, screenshots of my family's texts, and one particularly damning vendor list that contradicted the Foundation's public filings. On Wednesday night, a reply came: "We need to meet. In person. Tomorrow. Public space. Your call." Signed simply, D. Roth. I chose the most neutral place I knew, the public atrium of the Enoch Pratt Central Library. Fitting, really. The truth deserved to be passed across a table surrounded by books. The atrium was bright with skylight and echoed with soft footsteps. Students studied. Older men read newspapers. The scent of coffee from the lobby cafe mixed with the subtle musk of old pages. I sat at a table tucked near a row of indoor plants, the master file neatly placed inside a weatherproof envelope. At 2:07 p.m., Dana appeared. She was shorter than I expected, with cropped hair, sharp eyes, and the kind of posture that suggested she lived perpetually on the cusp of motion. She scanned the room once, spotted me, and walked over. "Anonymous," she said calmly. I nodded once. She sat. "You sent me something unusual," she continued. "And by unusual, I mean the kind of thing that makes lawyers sweat." She leaned in slightly. "Let's talk." I slid the envelope across to her. "This is everything," I said. "Every piece of evidence. Verified, cross-referenced, sourced. She didn't touch it yet. She held my gaze. Why me? She asked. Because you don't flinch around powerful people, I said. And because you check your facts. A faint smirk. Good answer. She opened the envelope. For the next 20 minutes, the only sounds were the rustle of paper, the soft relocation of documents, her occasional sharp inhale. Then she reached the legal warning, the one addressed to my parents as board members. Her jaw tightened. She flipped to the next section, screenshots of the smear campaign. The posts accusing me of emotional instability. Then the vendor inconsistencies. Then the falsified invoices. Her lips parted slightly. Her eyes sharpened. Finally, she reached the last page, a timeline, my timeline, mapping 6 years of fraud, cover-ups, revised filings, and manipulated event costs with librarian-level precision. When she finished, she exhaled. Long controlled. This, she said quietly, is explosive. I nodded. She tapped the legal warning. They knew. All of them. Yes. She slid one of the vendor reports toward me. Did you build this yourself? With Allison's help, I said. One of the employees. Is she willing to talk? Yes, with protection. Dana leaned back. You understand what will happen if this goes public. They'll deny everything, I said. They'll do more than that, she corrected. Your sister will weaponize her platform. Your parents will claim you're grieving irrationally. They'll insist you're lashing out. I know. They'll say you fabricated the evidence. She'll try, I said. But I've saved everything. Every unaltered file. Every metadata timestamp. Dana lifted an eyebrow. You're thorough. I'm a librarian. A small smile. I'll need a few days, she said. My editors will want verification. But this, she tapped the envelope, this is enough to start the clock. What does that mean? It means they won't know it's coming until the story is already too big to kill. A pulse of cold satisfaction slipped down my spine. What do you need from me? I asked. A recorded interview, she said. In your own words. I paused. Do you want my face on camera? No, she said. Not yet. Audio only. And I'll protect your identity until the moment it's legally safe. I swallowed. I'll do it. The interview took an hour. I told her everything, calmly, plainly, without embellishment. I explained the funeral conflict. The smear campaign. The discovery process. The fraud. My sister's obsession with appearances. My parents' complicity. How they had chosen their image over the truth, over their own grandson. When it ended, Dana reached over and touched my hand, a brief, steady gesture. I'm sorry about your son, she said. He deserved better from the people who claimed to love him. My throat tightened. Thank you. Go home, she said. Try to breathe. I'll handle the rest. The story broke 4 days later. I was shelving returns when my phone buzzed violently in my pocket, over and over again. Notification after notification. Calls from unknown numbers. Messages from coworkers asking if I was okay. A text from Allison, it's out. I stepped into the staff room, hands trembling. The headline spanned the top of the Baltimore Ledger's front page, local children's charity under federal scrutiny, misused funds, fake vendors, and internal legal warning buried. Underneath, a photo of Marissa at the spring gala. And my parents beside her. The article was brutal in its precision. Dana had verified everything. Every vendor inconsistency. Every fraudulent transfer. Every falsified expense. Every shell company. And the buried warning? Front and center. Including the CC listing my parents. My stomach twisted. This was no longer just a scandal. This was a federal crime. The reaction was swift. Within an hour, the foundation shut down its website. Within 3 hours, the board announced an emergency meeting. Within 6 hours, state investigators arrived at the foundation's office. By evening, it was everywhere: local news, regional outlets, Twitter, nonprofit watchdog forums, community Facebook groups. Videos from the gala, including the ones where my family praised unity and showing up for each other, were replayed with captions dissecting every lie. Then came the second wave, screenshots of the smear campaign, gleefully crying, "Sources say the sister is unstable." Dana had published them, along with the timestamps proving that while I buried my son, my family was dancing for cameras. People were furious. Comment sections turned vicious. Disgusting. Using a child's death as PR positioning? Arrest them. Boycott all their businesses. My God, the sister buried her son alone. My parents released a statement, cold, rehearsed, dripping with the usual polish. We had no knowledge of any misconduct. Our daughter Marissa is devastated by these allegations. We stand with her during this difficult time. 2 hours later, Dana published the letter proving otherwise, with their names in the CC line. The internet detonated. My family's credibility disintegrated in real time. My mother deleted her social media accounts. My father's company Facebook page was filled with hundreds of furious comments. My sister posted a crying video accusing vindictive individuals of trying to ruin her life. Dana responded by releasing the first audio excerpt from my interview. Just one line. Me, calm and level, while they posed for photographs, I buried my son alone. That clip went viral. And there was nothing they could do to stop it. By Friday night, the Cole name, once polished, pristine, admired, was radioactive. Sponsors severed ties. Collaborators withdrew support. Investigators expanded their probe. My sister's brand partnerships vanished overnight. And my parents? They were forced into silence as their reputation crumbled like a wet paper wall. As the city raged around them, as the truth finally found daylight, as every lie they'd built their lives on came undone, I sat alone in my quiet apartment, the rain hitting the windows in steady, gentle taps. No triumph. No exhilaration. Just a long, deep exhale, the kind that had been trapped in my chest since the day my family chose a gala over goodbye. It wasn't joy. It wasn't healing. It was release. And it was enough. The world didn't end for my family, but their world did. In the weeks that followed, the investigation widened. The state froze the foundation's accounts. Federal financial analysts pulled years of filings into evidence. 2 board members resigned immediately. Vendors attorneyed up. And Marissa's face, once plastered across charity brochures, became a symbol of everything people despise about performative philanthropy. When the authorities finally announced formal charges, the city buzzed with a stunned, almost embarrassed fascination. People who once praised my sister's visionary leadership now wondered aloud how they ever believed her. And my parents, the 2 people who'd spent their lives polishing their reputations to a mirror shine, were forced to watch as everything cracked. We didn't know, my mother insisted to reporters outside their home. The buried legal warning said otherwise. We're victims too, my father told a local station. The community didn't buy it. Real victims don't pose for gala photos while their grandson is lowered into the ground. Their business partners distanced themselves. Their country club membership froze. Old friends stopped answering calls. Within a month, they pulled their house off the market, not because they planned to stay, but because no one wanted to be associated with them long enough to buy it. As for Marissa, her downfall was loud. She cried on camera. Blamed rogue staff. Claimed ignorance. Denied everything. Then denied denying it. Then went silent when investigators subpoenaed her emails. But none of that was my concern anymore. While their lives imploded, mine quietly packed itself into cardboard boxes. I left Baltimore after the final wave of media coverage. Not in triumph, not in retreat, just with a sense of distance I'd needed for years. I drove east, toward a part of Maryland where the air smelled like salt and the days felt a little slower. The town I chose was small, the kind where people nodded hello at the grocery store and the loudest thing at night was the wind brushing through marsh grass. The library was tiny, maybe a fifth of the size of the one I'd worked in before, but the stacks were clean and cozy, and children came in every afternoon for story time. They didn't know my story, and I didn't offer it. I was just the new librarian who remembered everyone's favorite books. A few months after settling in, I started a weekly grief-centered reading group for parents. Not a support group, those have rules I wasn't ready to inhabit. More like an hour of gentle presence. We shared passages from books about loss, resilience, and quiet strength. Sometimes people talked. Sometimes they didn't. Both were allowed. People often thanked me as they left, saying the meetings felt soft, or lighter, or like a place to breathe. No one knew how much I needed that softness too. Eventually, I used part of my savings to install a little free library outside the community center, a small blue wooden box with a star pattern trim. Inside, I placed a single book to start the collection, Milo and the Moonfish. The same book I left at Noah's grave on the day the world chose to look away. I didn't attach a plaque. I didn't write a dedication. But on the inside cover, I taped a tiny photograph, Noah in his rain boots, laughing at something just outside the frame. I closed the door of the box gently. The wood clicked softly, almost like a whisper. The truth hadn't healed me. Revenge hadn't restored anything. Justice hadn't brought peace. But distance, honesty, and quiet purpose had given me a place to stand again, solid ground beneath the wreckage. And as I walked away, the wind picked up, rustling the pages inside the little free library, sounding almost like a voice saying, "Shoo. The water's talking." If you liked this story, feel free to subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one.